Are you the King of the Jews? So this is Christ the King Sunday. Today is, it's the last Sunday in the church calendar year. It's the Sunday before we enter Advent. It's the day that in our tradition we reflect on what it means to have Christ as King. And so today in our gospel, we hear how Pilate enters the headquarters, summons Jesus, and asks him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus is on trial, and Pilate is asking him this kind of, it's a just yes/no question. But if you notice, Jesus doesn't bite at this simple yes/no, are you, aren't you kind of question. He doesn't go for that because that question is much more nuanced. It's nuanced, I think, because Jesus is a king in some ways. And no, Jesus is not a king in other ways, not the ways of the world. Jesus is a king because of his status in God's kingdom, his place at the right hand of God in God's realm. Jesus is nothing like the kings that Pontius Pilate knows. He's not the kind of king that the Jews were looking for. He's not that Messiah that would come with military might, armies, political power, and conquer the Middle East for the Jews. And so in this meeting, in the grand Roman headquarters, Jesus is on trial. And Pontius Pilate asked Jesus a question, and then instantly the two are just talking past each other. They're talking about two different kinds of kings, two different kinds of kingdoms. Pilate is talking of this literal kingdom, the kingdoms of man. The kingdom of Jesus is, in a lot of ways, it's a kingdom that it's like if God were king. This is the way the kingdom, the world would be. What would that be like? But it's more than a matter of just simple literal kingdom and metaphorical kingdom, I think. These two kingdoms are entirely different on different levels. They're talking about two different planes of existence, two different realities. They're speaking of different kinds of truth. In the Gospel of John, this happens from time to time, where Jesus is talking past people, talking above people. Scholars call it, big word, Johannine dualism. And so this passage is just a really good example of that. It's where Jesus is kind of talking from his spiritual perspective here, and Pilate is talking from this earthly perspective. And then Jesus takes the higher ground in the conversation and says that his is the higher claim to truth, the truth. That his life from the beginning, he says, has been a testimony to the truth. In this passage today, it doesn't include this line, but the very next verse in the Bible, Pilate is asking, so what is truth? Which I think is a very important question. He asks, what is truth? We modern people kind of do this thing where we think untruth and the fake news or the stuff in the world, the misinformation, we think that's a new thing, but it has always been. And people have always blurred the lines between my truth, the truth of this world, and the truth. And so this question that Pilate asked it's a highly philosophical question. What is truth? I think in the context of our gospel today, the question is asking us, Is the true world this world, the world that we live in, with its laws of the land, laws of government, laws of science where we can figure things out and measure and prove? Is that truth? Or does the truth of our lives, the truth about what really matters, does that truth lie in something very different? Something deeper, something invisible? Does it lie in the love? Does it lie in the beauty? Or is truth maybe like the whole truth? Is that some sort of combination of kind of all of the above? Is truth derived from both worlds, from this world and the next? The truth about Jesus is this incarnational truth where he came into the world of flesh and bone and land and sky and math, matter, physics. And at the same time, he also has this ultimate connection to the world we can't see, the other realm. In John's gospel, Jesus is filling this gap between this world and the next. And so while Jesus clearly has one foot in each world, his authority as king does not come from the power structures or the truth of this world. His authority comes from a higher power, a deeper truth. And so the gospel, it says his kingdom is not from this world. Pilate's kingdom, though, is the one from this world where strength and physical power and earthly power and human might and human ingenuity, that's his world, his power, his kingdom. His power comes from the human political structures, through the economics, through the human intelligence. And in and of themselves, these are just not bad things. I mean, when we look at society, at how we thrive, when we look at the Roman Empire, when we look at the History Channel, and we're amazed, we're inspired by how these things are accomplished in the kingdoms of this world. But the problem is that human power and earthly power can very often come with very human flaws. Behind human power, we can easily find things like flawed agendas and corruption and greed, neglect for the poor, marginalized. That is the truth. That is the truth of Pilate's kingdom. There is great power, and there is the abuse of great power in the kingdoms of this world. That's the truth about the Jewish kingdoms that go all the way back to David, and that's the truth about the kingdoms in the world today. But the truth behind this heavenly kingdom that Jesus speaks of is a very different truth. And it's not a truth that is so foreign or hidden as we may think. In fact, I think we catch glimpses of this eternal truth all the time. It's the truth that we see in art, in the masterpiece. It's the truth that we find in poetry. It's the truth that we find when anything in this God-created world moves us deeply and we know it's true. It's the truth that we see in the pureness of children's actions. It's the truth that we see on the margins of life. When someone's about to leave this world, when someone comes into this world. It's the truth we know exists when we look into a newborn's face. It's the truth that we find in love and kind actions and friendships. It's the truth we find around a Thanksgiving table or this table. We know truth, the eternal truth of God's kingdom, when we see it and when we feel it. So just because I think God's truth is a deeper truth, that doesn't mean we don't access it. It just means that it's much, much larger. It's a larger truth than the truth that is surface. And so on this Christ the King Sunday, I think we have maybe a choice. We have a choice of which kingdom, of which king do we believe has a greater piece of the truth? And which truth and which kingdom and which king are we going to stake our lives on? Are we going to say that we believe in? And are we going to follow that truth, that way, and that king? Or do we march to the same truth and give homage to the same king as Pilate? So on this Christ the King Sunday, we proclaim that Christ is king. And it's because we say that his authority is true authority. His way is the true way. And his truth is the one that will lead us into deeper and deeper and deeper truth. Amen.